Well, you know, I feel for those astronauts. I mean, they when they went up there, they brought like 8 days worth of underwear. They were up there for 9 months. How do you do laundry in space? There are some little things, that's really why we haven't gone to Mars yet. It's not we haven't figured all the other stuff out. Is that we have no earthly idea how to do laundry in space. And they splashed down, and they're back. And am I the only one sitting here going, okay, what are they going to do with that thing that took them up there and then broke? That Boeing made. Remember when Boeing meant something? When you were like, oh, I'm going to be on a Boeing. We're good. That's their, wow, great stuff, And now it's like, well, when was this Boeing made? We have discovered, and this is true, by the way, we have discovered there's such thing as a COVID coach. In the RV industry, which I now know almost everything about, I figured I'm around 69,000 miles pulling RVs, pulling a fifth wheel now. So that's a few miles. And if it was made after March of 2020, for about the next 2.5, 3 years, the quality is going to stink. And we got stuck with one. We lost our shorts on the second one that we had, which we put a lot of money into. We had that really nice studio in. I would have pulled that thing forever. It had one drawback. If you get sick, I hadn't thought about that part. No place if you're sick. But other than that, it was great. But it was a COVID coach, and that's why the frame bowed too much. And what most people don't realize is RV roofs are glued on. They're literally glued on. And if you take anything that's glued and do this enough times, it's going to break and it's going to peel back, and that's what happened to us. Right down to the wood before I got home. I remember I pulled into Lordsburg, New Mexico, my last stop on the way back, and you're seeing the wood up there. And like, thankfully it wasn't raining on the way back that time. But the quality of everything just crashed. And if you're sitting there wondering, the one that we bought that was used was built in September of 2019. So it was not a COVID coach. And we are very, very thankful about that. But anyway, how did I get there from Boeing? I just really wonder. I feel for these folks. I feel for their families. But they did an interview. I saw an interview on Twitter, and one of them's clearly some kind of a Christian. I couldn't tell what kind of a Christian or whatever else, but he was basically saying, my Lord's going to work this for my good, and so he's in control, and I'm good with it, How do you go from 8 days to 9 months? I don't know how it works. I'm very thankful to SpaceX from going up and getting them, but I'm sitting here going, why didn't we do this before? And why didn't Boeing pay to do this? It's their craft that got them marooned up there. I don't know. But I do have a public service announcement for everybody. First, in regards to the RV, I'm hoping to pick it up next week. Go get it briefly, anyways, in our storage spot undercover, because I've seen a 91 degrees for next week one time. Here it comes. It's nice and cool today. It is 68 degrees in my house. So so it's nice right now. But we live in Arizona, and it's going to hit eventually. It lasts for 9 months out of the year, so that's just sort of how it is. But I hope to pick her up next week, and I'm looking forward to this next trip more so than normal after the last trip. Once you have to drag stuff into hotels and try to find food and try to sleep, and I've become spoiled. It is a wonderful way to travel, not overseas, but it's wonderful. So I'm looking forward to it. But we do have a travel fund link at aomin.org. If you this next trip, really looking forward to it. It's the Louisiana Loop trip. That's what I'm calling it, because I go to Louisiana, take a loop around the state, and come home. That's just how it's going to work. We're going to be in Livingston at the same time as Leonard Skinner's going to be in Livingston. And I think the original Leonard Skinner is buried somewhere by now, I imagine. I don't know. Look, all these bands, you look at those people and they look like they should be buried. But anyways, there's going to be a big old honkin' music festival thing going on the very same weekend that I'm debating Dr. Doug Levesque on the King James Version of the Bible being the best translation that we should use. And I'm actually going to have to stay a good distance from Livingston because everything was already booked up. We didn't realize it. And so I hadn't made my RV reservations. And the one park there, it's a nice park, but it's, of course, full up. And so I'm going to be driving a good distance to get there. But that'll be April 4th. I have posted the link on Twitter. You do need to, if you're going to be in the area, going to come, you need to click on that link. And I don't know, it's just there's a limitation as to how, I think we can only have 400 people in the room, approximately. And that'll be April 4th. And I'm looking forward to that one. I've listened to a number of Dr. Levesque's presentations, and he's a good speaker. Seems like a really nice guy. But King James Onlyism is still King James Onlyism. And I was listening to a presentation he made where he's talking about Sinaiticus Vaticanus and the papyri, and you should picture them as burning with the flames of hell. And Satan standing in the midst of the flames. And it's like, well, okay. See, I don't view the Byzantine manuscript tradition that way or anything like that at all. In fact, I was just before the program started, I was looking at my dad's Bible. And I need to talk to Jeffrey because he said he can fix this, and I really want him to. There you go. And but here's my dad's Bible, King James. First Bible I read all the way through was a King James. There's nothing wrong. It's just that it's over 400 years old, and King James translators themselves would be extremely shocked and surprised if anybody was running around saying that's the be all and end all of all things. But it will be an interesting encounter, and I think because when you think about it, we've done very few debates on that subject. We did one. I was on radio. I think that was on a radio program. I'm not even sure if I have that listed in my group of debates. But there will be plenty of cross-examination, plenty of time to really get into the text. We're always trying to find somebody on that side. We've tried to get some of the real Ripplinger, Ruckman fans to get out from behind the pulpit that they're screaming amen behind to engage in a meaningful encounter, and just can't do it. So that'll be April 4th in Livingston, Louisiana. And then I'm just, after I preach there on Sunday, popping up the road. Actually, I'm going to go through Jackson, I think, on the 55, because I've learned my lesson. You don't take those smaller highways to the middle of Louisiana. They're narrow, they're rough. No, I'm going to take the interstate up that way, up to the 20, up to the Calhoun area with Trey Fisher and the folks up there. And then I'm going to be going over to Skip Rainbolt's place as well. But we have a debate with A.K. Richardson on the 10th on Romans 9. Again, I've heard 2 debates that he's done in Romans 9. So, I basically have his outline. He certainly shouldn't have any problems coming up with my outline. As far as, the debate with Leighton Flowers, books, and everything else that we've dealt with on that subject. So what happens when you have two people who know exactly what the other person's going to say when they debate? Well, you can't sit there and go, well, I didn't think he was going to say that. Now, I could be wrong, and he could all of a sudden come up with a completely different perspective, I suppose, but I really don't expect that to happen at all. So it should mean that both our presentations should contain preemptive refutations of the other, and that the cross-examination should be pointed and purposeful and not wandering around, hopefully not wandering around out in the woods someplace. But yeah, so we'll be up there in the I-20 corridor in northern Louisiana as I make the loop and head back. So very much looking forward to that. Indeed. Just real quickly, again, Twitter tends to do these things to me. As I was sitting here getting ready for the program, this video pops up from the Fort Myers City Council. And there is a motion before them to authorize local officers to cooperate with ICE. And you have two women and a guy. Okay? The guy almost never moves. He's just sitting there looking like he wants to be on another planet at this point in time. Because the gal, who I don't know if she's in charge or just that's just the way the camera is sitting. She's in the middle, so I don't know. I'm not sure how many people are on the city council. The two ladies start crying. They start weeping because of how horrible and evil it is that anyone would ever want to deport anybody for any reason at all. I mean, we now have judges who think that they can control how the government responds to threats, internal threats and external threats. It truly is amazing, but we still live in a divided land. What happened in November hasn't changed any of that. For 4 years, at least probably for 4 years, we're going to see things done very differently. Might that help a number of people go, I guess that is sort of what you got to do if you want to have the nation survive? I don't know. I look at the educators in the public educational system. They haven't changed. All they're doing is changing DEI to other names. They're still pushing all the LGBTQ stuff. The public school system, I'm sorry to all the good public school teachers, but this is true. You know what the NEA is like. You know what its worldview is. And it does have a worldview, even if people think it's a dumb word to use. They have a worldview they function out of. And they are producing the students that end up at Columbia University in New York rioting to try to protect people who want to destroy the entirety of the United States. I mean, literally, the groups there are saying, we need to destroy Western civilization. Columbia exists because of Western civilization. There was a famous man who used to refer to these people as having young skulls full of mush. And that's what they are. They're young skulls full of mush. They've never lived life. They've been given everything on a silver platter. And they go off to Columbia to get a worthless degree and party and become radicals. And half of them have already, for example, used the medical system that Western civilization provided to them. They're not going to Haitian witch doctors. They're not using Chinese herbal medicine. They are having MRIs and things like that, which the Western world did this science thing, because back then we believed that you could study God's creation and you would find it to be consistent and coherent, and you could do scientific experimentation. And guess what? If you do an experiment today, it'll probably do the same thing tomorrow because of the regularity of nature, because God created all these things. This was back before we became idiots and secularists. But these are the people that are going to be voting. And 4 years from now, there are going to be fewer of us old folks, even though I can't believe how many people my age have succumbed to the idiocy, the utter idiocy of the secular left. I'm like, really? Haven't you seen how this all goes before? And it's like, no, they don't get it. So there are still two nations here. And I'm concerned that a lot of people are you tired of winning yet? Okay, whole lot better than... I sit back and go, Kamala Harris, did she really run for president of the United States? Did people give her over $1 billion to run for president of the United States? Did that really happen? I mean, I'm sorry, but she still has the IQ of a wet shoelace. How did that happen? How did people get excited about someone like that? That's nothing but a word salad. It befuddled me then, it befuddles me now. But here's the problem. If Gavin Newsom's the next guy up, because he's trying to rebrand himself and move to the middle, as they always know, you know where he really is. Who's going to vote for that guy next time? And if he gets in there, my concern is, Biden took he removed all of the safeties on the torpedoes. And he was doing all this stuff with executive orders. The Congress is functionally gridlocked. You can't get anything through Congress. Because it was designed to be inhabited by people who would vote for the best of the country. The problem is, you now have two countries represented in the Senate of the United States. And maybe, I suppose I'm trying to find a silver lining someplace. But maybe we will see what's happening in Europe. Though, let's be honest, Europeans look over here. We don't tend to look over there. That was my experience when I traveled over there, or wherever else in the world. But Europe is committing civilizational suicide right now. The UK, I do not even recognize it. And the last time I was in the UK was in 2019. And I loved going to the UK. I loved going to London. I loved riding the tube. I loved running the streets. I've told you before, if you want to, I'm not sure it's the same now, obviously, but up till 2019, you could get up early in the morning if you were staying in downtown London, and you could run along the Thames. And I would do squares, cross London Bridge, past Big Ben, down past the Eye, back across the bridge over there, or maybe go farther down. I mean, you could run wherever you wanted to run and not run into anybody as long as it was around sunrise. I mean, it was quiet as a tomb. 2 hours later, you wouldn't be able to run anywhere because there'd be too many people. But they are not early risers. Now, you can't run at night. I guarantee you that. But man, what a beautiful, beautiful place. So much Christian heritage. And it has been, you need to understand something. We may sit here and go, well, they're going to lose their Christian heritage in the sense that once the Muslims take over, they're going to tear down all the stuff that reminds them of Christianity or convert it into a mosque or whatever else. But you see, that's not losing it. That's because it's already been lost. That's past tense. If you don't love it anymore, if you don't even know what it is, it's just something you drive by, you walk by, you take a bus by, or whatever. You've already lost it and what it meant. So maybe, Germany just voted to indebt itself even more. And I didn't double check this, but it sounds like what they're doing. To put it into their constitution that within 20 years they have to have net zero, which means the end of the German economy. And guess which economy in Europe pushes Europe? The German economy. I mean, it's insanity on every level. But I'm meeting a whole lot of really insane people. And right now, they're not as loud as they were before because of what happened in the election. But they are still there. And there is only one way to reunite a divided nation. And on a surface level, that can be done by saying, remember 9/11? Well, most of you don't. That's the amazing thing. Just think about that. I mean, most young people have no earthly idea. Anybody under 30 really just doesn't have any idea what that was like. But for a few months, everybody was Americans again. But it doesn't last long. And I said at the time, did I not? Well, I don't know. I haven't listened to that many dividing lines. Well, I understand that. But we can document. It's there. We can document that on September 13th of 2001, we did the first dividing line after that. And my message was clear at the time. God bless America. That's what everybody's saying. God bless America. I said the only way we can ask for God to bless America is if he blesses America with heartfelt, soul-shattering repentance. And I said, if we see a change in the society, if we see a recognition of the evil of abortion, the evil of homosexuality, okay, then maybe God is blessing this nation in that way. We didn't see any of that. And that unity that existed for a while didn't last long. And the only way that a unity can actually be produced, unfortunately, we've got wacko, quote-unquote, Christian nationalists running around thinking that unity is found in your ancestry or the color of your skin. That's not where unity comes from. What we used to do in this nation is if you legally immigrated to this nation, you had to pass certain tests. You had to swear certain allegiances. Most of the people who became American citizens knew more about the Constitution of the United States than almost anybody born here. I mean, the kids I graduated with, and this would have been in 1981, in high school, Constitution, amendments, what? Wouldn't have had no idea in comparison to someone who had to come here legally and pass the test to do stuff like that. The foundation for a unified nation is in its worldview, is in its commitments. And it doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter where your grandpappy and everybody else came from. If you have a heartfelt commitment to that nation and its betterment, great, fantastic. Secularism destroys all of that. Secularism is the battery acid of human civilization, spirituality, anything. It's vile. It's anti-Christian. It's anti-human. Because it leads to Nietzsche's void. There's no place else to go. There's no meaning, no transcendent value, no beauty. And so the only thing that I can see that will bring this nation any kind of prosperity in the future. Oh, we can do things now. We can, but look, Okay, I will admit, somebody sort of ran through the list of probable candidates for the Democratic nomination in 2028. And I'll have to admit, if it stays that way, okay, we might have more than 4 years. We might have 12. I mean, there are literally people. There are Democrats sitting there going, "No, we are so messed up that it's going to take forever." But eventually, power corrupts. People who have power do stupid things. And so you're going to get scandals, and you're going to get this, and you're going to get that. And the other side's going to take over. And like I said, now all the safeties are off on the torpedoes. If you don't know what that means, you haven't watched The Hunt for Red October, which, okay, when did that come out? Wow. Well, yeah, early 2000s? Alec Baldwin was a young man, yeah. Yeah, and the Scottish guy doing the Russian accent was really bad, but it was a great film. It was really, really well done. You need to watch, if you haven't seen Hunt for Red October, you need to see Hunt for Red October. It was awesome, and it will explain to you safeties on torpedoes really well. Anyhow, the other guys are going to take over, and they're going to do the same thing, only worse. And we're going to be in this pendulum swing of two nations wrestling with one another, sort of like the twins in Sarah's in her womb, not her womb, Sarah's womb. Anyway, Romans 9. It's sort of like the same thing, and pulling at each other. You know, who's going to get? Oh, stop that! Who's going to get born first? Type of situation. And no nation can survive that. You can't have a nation that goes one direction for 4 years and then the other direction for 4 years and then the other direction for 4 years. It will try that in an aircraft. Try that just 180-degree turn, and eventually the wings fall off. I mean, the thing falls apart. It can't work. It can't work. So I don't know what the future is going to hold. Really can't. I really don't know. All right. I have been informed that Jay Dyer did a webcast talking about what happened last week, and I don't care. I really don't. If anyone can watch that man's behavior and see what he's doing with his life and how he behaves, and then believe almost anything he has to say, what can I say? I can't help you. You're always gonna disagree with me or think that I'm worthless or whatever. Fine. I don't care. I don't exactly know why I gave him as much credit as I did to even think about doing a major debate with him, because I think it'd be really important. It's vital. And I've had friends contact me and say, you need to contact this person, that person. One or two names have come from everybody as individuals who are adults, have self-control. You know, when you think about it, there are certain people out there that, set up their iPhone on their kitchen table with their unwashed dishes in the background, and do 2.5-hour videos thinking that everybody in the world needs to hear everything they have to say, and they do it multiple times a week. And they just go on long harangues for hours at a time. I don't want, at my point in life, I do not want to purposefully, knowingly debate anybody who would fit in perfectly in the third grade playground. Okay? I just don't. I've had to do that a few times in my life, and I just don't have any interest in it. Not anymore. I have nothing to prove. I mean, seriously, come on. I got nothing to prove as to the subjects I'll debate and stuff like that. And if you don't have self-control, if you can't control your tongue, your arrogance, your pride, your anger, if you have to behave like Jay Dyer behaved, talking about a gay lisp, I mean, seriously? You've got to be kidding me. There's no reason to even communicate with such folks. You just, don't poke the rabid dog. Just walk on by quietly, and they'll self-destruct on their own. They'll blow up on their own. You don't have to be throwing matches at them. They'll go poof on their own. So, but like I said a week and a half ago, lies have long lives. I ran to some guy on Twitter just yesterday. Yeah, but you don't think Ignatius existed. And I'm like, there's 2.5 hours of video out there explaining everything. They don't care. I said when it first happened, in the first program afterwards, I said, 5 years from now, I'll have somebody, if I'm still kicking, and even if I'm not, somebody else have to deal with it, who will pull that lie out and throw it out there, because lies have long lives. They go on forever and ever and ever, because there are people who want to believe things. That's how they know that we have stood up against the best the other side has to offer in many, many different areas. And so they can't answer our arguments, so what they have to try to do is find a way to calm their own conscience. And, he can't be right about that because he's wrong about that over there. And that's how you run this kind of stuff. And it's a shame. Algo just posted the link, a sober word following 9/11. I haven't looked at that. Have you? Yeah. I'll repost that. I remember. Now this is weird. The visual memory that I have of doing that isn't over in the corner where we started doing the dividing line, where the desk was over in that corner of the garage back then. I thought I was more out in my office someplace. That's strange. Yeah. That may be where it was, because we didn't have to worry about videos or anything. Yeah. We didn't have video back then, didn't even think about it, and still wish that we never had. Anyway, so yeah, I just reposted a sober word following 9/11. So yeah, that was 24 years ago, coming up on 24 years ago, and not much has changed as far as what is really needed in the nation is major change along those lines. So anyway, my hope is to, and I'm not making contacts yet. I've got too much stuff going on between now and the next trip, but I've got a little time. Got a bunch of stuff I got to do at home before a summer trip. But during that time, I want to get hold of these individuals that have been recommended to me as being mature, well-read, self-controlled, to represent the other side. And then I really do want to debate the Seventh Ecumenical Council, because the more I've been diving into it, the more convinced I have become that it is fundamentally the Achilles heel. There's a lot of Achilles heels for Rome. There's all sorts of stuff. Papacy and the Marian dogmas and all that kind of stuff. But with the rise of interest in Eastern Orthodoxy, and Dyer was talking about, well, I challenged him to debate, and this goes off into all this stuff that's incredibly esoteric. Just way out there. I mean, you can't really argue that it has anything to do with the apostles. It develops in a much later period of time. At least if you deal with Nicea II, the Seventh Ecumenical Council, 787, you're dealing with a topic that is relevant to both Eastern Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism because both accept it as valid. And not just, well, we'll accept it, but as authoritative. It's anathemas. It's infallible. And, of course, once you get into it and you find it, they're quoting forged sources and they're giving you exegesis that people at the time found laughable, let alone after the Reformation. What you'll hear, and this is true of other councils, is what they'll say is, well, the argumentation of the council is not infallible, only the conclusions. The same thing with the Pope. So everybody knows that Roman Catholicism has completely misinterpreted Genesis chapter 3 and read Mary in there and all the rest of the stuff. And Roman Catholic scholars will admit that was a mistake, that the understanding that was used as part of the argumentation regarding Mary and the seed and all the rest of it was in error. It was an error in the Vulgate, understanding the Vulgate, things like that. But that doesn't change the fact that the statement, that the conclusion coming from the errant argument will always be infallible. Now just think about that for just a second. That tells you almost everything you need to know about supposedly infallible statements and where they come from and things like that. As long as it's defined in a certain way, then that's going to be authoritative. You have to believe it. And you go, but the argument to get there was all wrong. Doesn't matter. As long as so-and-so said it, it's true. And it's like, wow. So by dealing with that, and what's interesting, another important illustration here is, I know in most church history classes, if you're not actually studying church history as a major or something like that, and the vast majority of seminaries don't have a special church history track where you're just, I'm going to go teach church history. Some do, but the vast majority of pastors that go to seminary, you take a couple fast classes, and that's about all there is to it. I wonder how many people I would imagine, probably, I'll give them credit for this, I bet you the Eastern Orthodox would have the highest percentage of their own people that could tell you the first 7 ecumenical councils. And might even tell you what they were about. I'm not saying that there's not nominal Eastern Orthodoxy. There is, and they might not have a clue. But because that's where their emphasis is. How many Roman Catholics, honestly, that you know, could tell you the first 7 ecumenical councils or anything after that? And part of that, I know there is no infallible listing of what the ecumenical councils are to begin with. East and West disagrees over that. And once you dive into it, and look, Protestants, again, much less useful term because it's not unified. It doesn't talk about a particular set of theological beliefs, things like that. But yeah, vast majority of people I know of wouldn't have a clue. How many people even know when the Council of Nicaea met, let alone Nicea II? And then you really start digging into it, and it gets even messier because you find out after the Council of Nicaea, the Arians take over. They take over. And there are, Sirmium, Ariminum, there are these councils that meet in the decades after Nicaea, and they compromise the Nicene faith. And that's why Athanasius says, nope, not doing that. That's why he keeps getting kicked out 5 different times. And that's when you realize, wait a minute, so they had no idea that Nicaea was ecumenical in the first place, because no one had ever heard of an ecumenical council. No one had ever invested that kind of authority in one of these meetings. This is all anachronistic. We're all looking back with modern eyes. And that's why, and I think it was Norm Geisler. I really think it was. I remember, I think it was Norm Geisler who said, I accept the first 7 ecumenical councils. And I'm like, no, you don't. And it wasn't just that each one of these councils had canons which were regulations for priests and bishops and eventually monasteries and monastic orders and all the rest of that kind of stuff, which, if you're not a Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox, is meaningless to you. But even the fundamental assertions that they made, if they promulgated the decree, the Chalcedonian decree of 451, something like that, if they did that, if you go to Nicea II, and you look at what they said, you telling me you accept the fundamental assertion that veneration of icons, and I'm not just talking about, we use the term veneration. We're talking religious devotion, kissing the icons. They said that is apostolic, and it most clearly is not. I mean, a book just came out. In fact, this is interesting. Let me tell you. I had a lady on Twitter about a month ago contacted me on Twitter. I forget what caused this. But she said, I used to be a big fan of you and Jeff Durbin. I listened to all of the Apologia stuff and the whole 9 yards, and I've become Eastern Orthodox. And it's obvious that this is what the apostles taught. And then she mentions this book. And here, this proves that prior to the Council of Nicaea, they were venerating icons. We'll do some work on it. The only thing I know that's out there on it right now, because it only came out last year, Gavin Ortland. And by the way, I said on the program about, 3 weeks ago or so, said that, Gavin clearly doesn't like me. That was based on some back and forth that I could tell was going on between Gavin and Trent Horn. Gavin, to his credit, contacted me and said, I apologize. That was never what I intended to communicate to anybody. And I don't want you to think that I have something against you along those lines. And so we have had some nice back and forth since then. And, we don't agree about everything. But when it comes to this area, especially with Eastern Orthodoxy and the historical stuff, the guy's really solid. He's really, really good. And he did a response to the author of this book. So the guy who wrote the book that came out late last year that was being recommended to me, see, this will prove it. He was on webcast before that. And Gavin Ortland walked through the examples of alleged veneration of icons prior to Nicaea. All I can say is that level of desperation, and it is desperate. I mean, the equivocation going on is astonishing. Is itself proof that what Nicea II said was completely wrong. It was just now. But here's the neat thing. I wasn't going to do this today. I was going to do a review of some of the points in the debates we haven't gotten to. Maybe I'll still have a few minutes at the end. But this is something that I have emphasized over and over again on this program. And I know some of you are tuning out right now because you don't care. Let me, before you hit the stop button, can I say something? Over the years, I've had so many people who've come up to me and they've said, my son, my daughter, my husband, my wife has gone off into this, gone off into that. And I didn't know how to respond to them. I didn't know how to react to this. I've been going through your stuff, and man, if I had just listened to the whole program, if I had just not turned stuff off when I did, I would have heard the answers to my issues. And so there is a reason to put the work into knowing something about church history. And when you talk about what we might call historical epistemology, how do you know what a group teaches? How do you, if a group claims it has infallible authority, how do you know? How, I've used the illustration before, how would you have known that Honorius was wrong to be a monothelite in the 30 years between when he taught it and when it was condemned? And he was condemned as a heretic. How would you have known? How did you know during the Arian resurgence, the Arian ascendancy after the Council of Nicea? How would you know that Ariminum and Sirmium were wrong? What was the basis? What was the basis Athanasius used to say that those councils were wrong? Scripture, by the way. But if you're looking to a church organization, and there are entire decades where you have no way of knowing, and Second Nicaea is a really good illustration of this. I need to find the time to put together a real nice keynote presentation where we can put it on a timeline. So you can see the Council of Hieria, and then Nicea II, and then Frankfurt. These are 3 councils. Hieria, 754, I think. I don't have it blank screen in front of me. No, I mean, I just don't have anything up. Hieria was an iconoclastic council. Get rid of icons. Strongly condemns icons. Nicea II, what do you call people who use iconodulia, iconodules? There's different iconophilia. There's different ways of coming up with it. But people who venerate icons. So they completely reverse. Okay, between those 2 councils, how do you know which one's right? Because Hieria claimed to be, because there's 33 years between them. So how do you know? Hieria claimed to be ecumenical. So how do you know? And since it's a topic that the councils before that have never addressed, how do you know? You don't. You don't. But Nicea II is still going to anathematize you. And everybody that was at Hieria that hadn't died by then. And then Frankfurt comes along after Nicea and takes what might be seen as a not a mediating position, because Frankfurt denied the veneration of icons, but they weren't as cut and dried and nasty, I guess, as Hieria, because Hieria and Nicea II, there's no room for disagreement. Anybody who disagrees with us on this, anathema, off with their heads. And there were people dying and being chucked in prison and stuff like that over this stuff. Frankfurt's like, let's not kill anybody about it, but we reject what Nicea II has said. This is not apostolic. This does not go back to the apostles. This is anti-scriptural. And so Hieria and Frankfurt are in agreement at that point. They're just a different temperature, shall we say. That's a good term. A little lower temperature with Frankfurt. Well, it's probably colder there, but anyway. So how are you supposed to know? I mean, Frankfurt was called by Charlemagne, Charles the Great. Much better known to church history than Empress Irene, who called Nicea II, and who, to keep her son from becoming emperor, had him blinded and thrown in prison. So how are you to know? Given what we're told, Sola Scriptura, blueprint for anarchy. Okay, so you want to have councils deciding all this stuff, huh? Okay, all right. So how did they know? The answer is There's no way on God's green earth they could. They couldn't know. So, what do you do? What do you do? So, I think it's, in fact, I've been digging up good, solid, scholarly stuff. There were a bunch of articles that I'd already read that were made reference to this one. Rich has been wondering what in the world I've been buying. Because generally, if I can get it on Kindle, I send it to him on that, and then he buys it for me, and I put it on my Kindle and stuff, but this isn't available on Kindle, sadly. Images, Iconoclasm, and the Carolingians by Thomas F.X. Noble. Not a small little work. A lot of the books on this subject are not real small. But this goes through Frankfurt and its response to Nicea II and all the stuff that's going on there. So there's a lot of stuff. I've shown you the other books that, Price and things like that, and they're they thick. A lot of material to be dug through, but it is there. Most people don't know anything about it. And it's far beyond the normal level of apologetic stuff that's happening online. That's for sure. Did you raise your microphone?
I did. One of the questions I've been wanting to ask you is, and without having to go back and re-listen to the debate on veneration of saints and images.
You mean with Madrid?
Yeah. I don't recall you guys getting into this in that one, but
it
seems like there'd be some overlap.
Yes. That debate, my goodness, that was one of the great debate series on Long Island. That would have been about 04, maybe? Somewhere in that area, 05, something like that. Yeah, my argumentation in that was not church history. If I manage to get this debate set up, it's going to be solely focused on the ecumenical nature of the council and not anything else. So, especially given the context and the audience, we were focused there on the biblical material. And I couldn't tell you. Now I could just take the video of that, drop it into my program on my Mac, spit out a transcript of it, and do some searches and things like that. I don't recall off the top of my head whether Patrick said almost anything about Nicea II or anything like that at all, because in my opinion, Rome endures Nicea II, but it's the East that lives on Nicea II. So it's interesting how the same council has been functionally interpreted differently. Oh no, this must be an algo thing.
Of course, he would know. 2002 is immediately. It's like he's right there.
2002. There you go.
Algo, can you tell us whether or not Nicea II came up at all?
Yeah. Did Patrick Madrid ever talk about Nicea II? Since obviously Algo has it memorized. There you go. We'll see what comes back from that. Let's see if he's as fast as Grok. Grok and Algo, they both, hey, you know what? They both have 3 letters. Grok and Algo. And I'm sort of starting to wonder if Algo maybe Grok and Algo. 4 letters, that's what I said. Oh, sorry. Yeah, they both have they both have the same number of letters. So I'm wondering if Algo has just always been a beta testing AI that's just been around for a lot of years, a lot of years.
There were people who were in the old channel trying to guess what Algo stood for. I happen to know what it stands for, but a lot of people guessed that it meant algorithm.
Yeah.
It doesn't, but there's something there.
Yeah. It just appeared on my thing here. Madrid debate was 2002. So he did not mention Nicea II. I did not think. Yeah, that just popped up on mine too. Yeah, I did not.
Algo says it, therefore it is.
Well, I'll be honest. I've caught Grok on a number of things recently, so you never know. But anyhow. Yes, thank you, Algo, who is listening even right now. So yeah, I think there will be some real use to that, and like I said, after this next trip, then I'll start reaching out and making some contacts, because I want this to be something that's done well. I want it to be something that's done in a good spot, a good location, and I'm not talking about anything before the end of the year or early next, and so I'll finish up with this, and then we will, on the next program, I want to get into some of the stuff that didn't end up getting said in the debates, like what is propitiation, and why did it seem to me that Joe Heschmeyer was much more interested in trying to do early church stuff than to even define what propitiation is, because I think that's a tough spot for them. They have to deal with. I did start getting into indulgences and stuff like that, because they have an entire theological system that they have to defend at those particular points. But so we'll see about that. But now that made me jump track of where I was going to go with the last one. That's no fun. You start thinking about those debates and things like that, and you can't end up going there. That's a bummer. There was something that had happened in Twitter that had bothered me a great deal, and I was going to just sort of finish up with that in the last 3 minutes, but it has gone the way of the dodo bird, and I'm just noticing they're taking the guys out of the spacecraft, the space capsule. After 9 months in space, especially when you weren't prepared for it. That's, yeah. He's going to be somewhat immobile for a while, I would imagine. A lot of bone loss, muscle loss, stuff like that. They normally try to get you all beefed up to do that, but not for an 8-day journey. It's not going to matter. So just go on for the weekend, honey. I'll be back. I'll mow the lawn when I get back. So, okay. Can you find the house now? I'm not sure. That's sort of a sad way to do things. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can you imagine the honeydew list when he gets home? Whew. Oh, wow. Let's hope that he's got some older boys or something that have been keeping up with all that stuff, or we'll never see that poor guy again. I feel sorry for him along those lines. But I'm glad they're back. I'm glad they're back in one piece and they're safe and all the rest of that stuff. That's a good thing. So anyway, next program we will talk about some of the. It seemed to me that in both debates, a minor issue, sometimes not even on the topic, ended up distracting from what should be the primary issue. And so I preached Sunday afternoon on the atonement, and a lot of what I said was directly relevant, really, for everybody else to that particular topic. So if you want to hear some of the comments I'll be making, that was there. And I did it in only 45 minutes, which is probably the shortest sermon at Apologia that I've ever heard. But we were going to try to do baptisms. Did you hear about this? We were going to try to do baptisms. The Presbyterians don't want us to do baptisms. It's a Presbyterian church. No. What they did for years is they wouldn't fix the heater. And so we were doing the Didache, baptized in cold water. Oh, yeah. And we kept asking. So finally, they got the heater fixed. But the problem is, they ran only one water line into the baptistry. Because it's an old Baptist church, so it's got a full baptistry. They just never use it. And it goes to the heater. So they didn't get it started. We had requested that they fill it for us. They didn't get it started. We get it going. Jeff tried to get into the water. He came walking out, and from his feet up his leg, this far, is red. It was scalding hot. And we've got young children. We had to move the service. We had to do it next week. And that's why I did a short sermon. I didn't want us there till 7:00 at night. We start at 4. That's a long time when you got little kids, and stuff like that. So yeah, we had to move it to next week, and that means Jeff's preaching. So who knows when we'll get done next Sunday night. But I literally used my phone. I set it for 45. I did just like I did in debates. I set it for 45 minutes, and I got done in 45 minutes. So we'll see what happens next week. But yeah, we need to have a cold water and a hot water. So, somewhere in between would be good, because we don't really need it in July. We're good, okay. But in any other, this time of year, it would be pretty nippy to do it that way. But the trials and tribulations of churches that rent from other churches, and that's our folks do a good job of it, but it's still a real challenge. So, anyways, just wrapping stuff up. Next time we will go through some of the biblical argumentation on those debates, and just a reminder: travel fund at aomin.org if you want to. We did a bunch of upgrading on the unit that I'm really excited about. Yes, sir. I'm really excited about it. Stuff like the inverter and solar controller, and that's stuff that I don't need to be telling you about. But I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm going to Louisiana on this trip, and I now have shock absorbers. And you might go, don't all RVs have shock absorbers? No, they have springs. Big, and we have good heavy-duty springs on that unit. That's fine. But there are no shock absorbers. And our dear friends up in Dolores, Colorado, I won't get them into trouble by naming names, but we've got a fine couple up there that support the ministry, and I've stayed with them up there, and I'm going to hopefully be staying with them again this summer. Visited Apologia a few weeks ago, a month and a half ago, and said, man, we put shock absorbers on our RV, and it's made all the difference in the world. Because you'll remember in the Jayco, if I put anything in that back closet, remember the first time I pulled it? Everything that was on a plastic hanger snapped the plastic hanger heads off. That's how much it's doing this number. It just snapped the heads right off. It's in a pile on the bottom of the thing. They said none of that happens anymore. So I'm like, I'm going to Louisiana. I need the shock absorbers. And I asked the guys at the dealership, why isn't this standard? And I said, because most people don't use an RV the way you're using an RV. They take it someplace, park it, and they're there a long time. Then they come home and they park it for a long time. They're not using it to actually travel around the United States. So for you, good idea, good investment. So if you want to help us keep that rolling, yes, sir.
So I did want to mention that this morning we discovered something regarding our app. And we had gotten a note sometime back, somebody saying that they're not able to get the app. And so we got to investigating, and there's something wrong both in Google and in the Apple system where the app isn't available. It's working, but for new downloads and it's not offering it. And so we don't really know why, but we're investigating that. So please be patient with us. We're hoping to have that corrected very soon. And so if you follow the link to get the app on the website, it's no worky.
Huh.
So we're trying to figure out why and get that resolved. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Huh. I wonder what Leighton's been up to recently. He's gotten into programming, I guess. Who knows? We'll see. All righty. All right. Thanks for watching the program today. We'll see you next time. God bless.